Hi, Ria. Thank you for coming onto this podcast with me.
Thank you for
My
having me.
most welcome, very welcome. Thank you for being here. I really appreciate it. Um, so you were interested in the topics of discussion that I put forth. The first of which was emotional control, so that
Uh-huh.
negative and toxic energies do not build up. The second of which was the dangers of excessive technology. Um, and the third of which was emotional immersion to develop and enrich and nourishing bonds between parent and child slash children.
Yeah.
So, with these topics in mind, please tell me, what would you like to discuss first?
So I would love to talk about the control because I think when a lot of things that we hear on parenting advice on emotional control is basically that we should oppress and always be in a calm state and and then everything goes smoothly. But the problem with that is what I've experienced with my children and what I've learned is that our nervous system, if we try to oppress, the children will express it because they can still sense it. So it's a nonverbal communication between the parent and the children, especially when they're below 12 years of age. So as much as we want to stay calm, and this was my experience, I had a lot of anxiety in the beginning of my parenting journey because you're new to it, and I had gone through some losses in my family, so I was very scared to do something wrong. And I was so anxious. I was trying not to show it, but my daughter was picking that up. So
Mm,
so she also became anxious. And only when I was healing that could I actually. So you have to be authentic. It's okay to be upset, because we also want to model for them how to be comfortable with big emotions. We want to show them that we're comfortable with their big emotions, but that as adults we also have them, and it makes much more sense for them because it's more coherent with what they're feeling. So I can say, for example, I'm upset right now, I'm really not happy. So I'm gonna, but then you can also model how to manage that, right? So you can say, I'm gonna go away and take a deep breath, I'm gonna take a sip of water, I'm gonna. So the tools then that you model, they will also see that and model that as well. So I think that's very important that we don't have to oppress those feelings because we're not comfortable with big feelings in our children, but neither in ourselves because we have probably been raised not to express them.
absolutely, for sure. These are very compelling points, if I do say so myself. And I would like to just state and put forth. So a few things that catches me with what you just said. I want to share with you about, because you mentioned you lost family members, and I want to share with you this. My son's mum or mummy, um, my wife passed away to COVID-19.
Oh
Um,
my God. Mm.
Although I don't think it was COVID, I think it was the injection, but that's another story for another time. But nevertheless, the pandemic took her life. So what I'm trying to get forth to you is that I very much resonate deeply with losing family members and the challenges that this entails towards your own um, developmental capabilities onto your child. um, and how do you do this in the right way based off your mental, emotional, psychological, and spiritual state by going through such a tragedy, right?
Yeah.
Um, and obviously for you, it was the same in different ways with other family members. So I want to say I really resonate a lot with you there on that topic. And like you, because I think based on what you've said, and correct me if I am wrong, you're a firm believer in energy. Now, a lot of people like think like talking, blah 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 blah, is talking, and to a certain degree, that's true, but it's so much more than that. Especially with children, right?
Yeah.
It's the energy behind the words. It's the energy behind what's being put forth. Because, like as
Hmm.
you say, children they do feel, especially when they're like between the ages of like 1 to say 7 or 8. That's the most pivotal time where they're absorbing everything like a sponge, right? So if we're forced, and that's another thing I think I got correct in your messaging, where like we can read all the books or we can listen to all the people in the world, and yeah, fine. If we're forcing ourselves to be calm to a
Hmm.
certain degree, it works on the surface. But if we scratch at the surface, is it really impactful? As in, going back to the energy hypothesis, is it really impactful for them to live in their life? Because the child is going to feel our energy through and through. So therefore, I think the main thing I take away from what you say is that it's of the utmost importance that we're in control of our own energy and our
Yeah,
own mental, emotional, psychological, and spiritual state, right?
yeah. Well, first of all, I'm very sorry for your loss. That must have been really a blow, especially also for you and your child and the whole situation. But
Thank
I think people don't believe maybe so much in energy, but you know the nervous system is part of the physical body, right? So it's true, it's energy, but it's also we know that stored stress is very damaging to the body. You develop cholesterol, you know that's bad for you if you're constantly in this unregulated state. So likewise, it's bad to be there for your child, and if you don't start healing your nervous system and the stored stress and the stored trauma maybe that you have in your body, then the child will just sense that. So that's the energy you're talking about, exactly, right? So
Yeah.
I think and also what it teaches you, if you try to oppress your emotions,
Mm.
the child will also feel it needs to oppress its emotion, his or her emotions at some point, because that's what you model. Because if mommy never gets sad or angry or anything, like I initially didn't really want to cry in front of my children because I was thinking they will think something is really bad, they will get worried. But I've learned that it's important also to model to them that it's okay to be sad, and mommy's going to cry for 5 minutes, but it's nothing to worry about because, adult issues are adult issues is always what I communicate to them. You're a child. It's not your problem to deal with. But
Mhm.
we have happy days and sad days, and it's all okay. There's no good and bad feelings in that sense.
Oh, absolutely, for sure. One thing I've taught my son is that like because I'm a firm believer, and being that this is like the emotional control category, I just wish to say to you, like, I'm a firm believer in making, whilst being still child friendly, of course, I am a firm believer in the importance of teaching our child reality.
Hmm.
Because in reality, life, and especially now, life is tough. You add in first COVID, now cost of living, the economy, all these things. My belief is some parents may agree, some may disagree, because everyone has their own style of parenting. My belief is that if we're too gentle to our children nowadays, we still love them, of course, and we still baby them at times because they're a child. But if we do that too much in excess with the way the world is now, man, I don't know. I don't think, my personal belief is, I think it's good, whilst being child friendly, to explain to our child/children about the reality of life and the emotions on how we feel as
Hmm.
parents based on the realities of life. So by doing this, and please excuse my WhatsApp there. It's very annoying to have to mute it all the time and distractions. Sorry. But where was I? So yeah, like if we don't, my belief is, my opinion is that if we don't teach our child/children the realities of real life, they're going to not understand how we feel as their parents. Why are we feeling angry? Why are we
Hmm.
feeling upset? They're not going to understand it. Whereas if we teach them and integrate teaching them whilst being, child friendly in a child friendly way, it's worked out very well for me and my own child. I'll say to you this, because there are times where, I've been upset, obviously, and I felt the pressure with losing my son's mum and my wife,
Mhm.
but me then having to play mummy role and daddy role, as well as parenting across generations from different sides of the family, mind
Mhm.
you, with his nan, because there's three of us left in the family, slash my mother-in-law.
Yeah.
And you can imagine the age discrepancies as well. I'm 37 in the middle. My son's 7. My son's nan is 73. So you can imagine the energy that takes as well, right? And we're only human, and I'm not the perfect parent by any means. I'm perfectly imperfect. But I'll tell you one thing I am very good at is the emotions and developing my son emotionally, psychologically, and spiritually. I'm very good in that sense, and the playfulness. And also being real with him whilst being child friendly with him as
Mhm.
well. And all I wish to say to you is that by because I do feel the pressure, and there's times where I'll mirror you that where I've cried, and also where I've been, and I have like lots of weights here for my testosterone and man testosterone and things. So I say to my child, look, Dad is a bit angry right now and I'm feeling the pressure. Like, can I just go and whack out for a bit? And
Mhm.
okay, Dad, no problem. And we have like a beautiful understanding. But my main point is, in my opinion, we would not have been able to have gotten to this understanding had it not been for myself, my son's father, to say to my son the realities of everyday life whilst being child friendly, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I mean, I think you touch on a very important point because I think it's not good to kind of hide things from them that they can clearly see that are happening, right? So
Right.
didn't lose my husband. I separated from my husband because it we had not a very harmonious relationship. So I needed to process that, of course, with my children, and they were pretty small. They were only 2 and 4. um which brings me to the next part on how actually you can work on your emotional state. But it's this so I needed to give them a few messages. Of course, I cannot explain to them adult issues because and they should not get involved in that. And I think there's a risk that we especially when the child is very expressive. So I have a
Mm,
daughter, she's almost 7, and she's very good with words.
same.
So I need to be very conscious that I don't talk to her as to an adult just because she's so smart and she kind of understands, but she doesn't understand on an emotional level, or her brain is just not developed enough to grasp that. But I think it's true that you have to be so these people, for example, that then stay in a situation and sugarcoat it and say everything's fine between me and dad or whatever, and the child can just sense that it's not true. I think there you're absolutely right. You have to be honest to a certain extent in a child friendly way for them, to feel that things are actually real, right? Just because otherwise they will know there's something wrong.
Yeah.
But in terms of the processing, I love that you brought up the play, because what I then learned in my journey,
Hmm.
because they
Yeah.
had emotional impact. Of course, when the father left, they were missing him, they were crying, especially the
I'm very
4 year
sorry.
old.
I'm very sorry to hear that. Genuinely.
Yeah, it's okay, it's life, right?
Right.
But I think when I could then learn how to do connected play with them, with this a special type of play that
Yeah.
is like a play therapy but at home with mom. So we do that twice a week since 1 year now, and it's amazing how and they have to go through different stages in that. It's quite interesting because they have to go through an aggressive stage, for example, which is for some parents is hard to take, but it's very important for them to process because they will reenact situations where they felt they had no power,
Mm,
because
mm,
often children don't have power to
yeah.
influence the situation, and then they go through it. But then um, anger outbursts that my daughter, for example, at 4 or 5, after that separation from her dad, really went away. So just by playing, and often you don't even know what they're playing, or you don't know how they're processing, and sometimes it's sensory play, and sometimes it's with swords, and they'll cut you up and with swords, or they'll say, because she had a lot of ear infection, so I had to always force her to take these eardrops, especially when she was small,
Right.
and she hated it. And then she would say, okay, mommy, you have an ear infection, in that special play, in that connected play. Now I'm gonna give you eardrops, and they're gonna tickle, and you have to hold very still. And I was like, yeah, I can see what I can see what you're doing, but that's how they process and then get it out of their system, right? It's
Yeah.
amazing how that actually can work.
Absolutely. A couple of things to respond to there that really stand out to me is the first thing is, like, yes, it's true, coinciding with what you say, like we can't be too honest and too real, because even although they're, and my son's exactly the same, very expressive, articulate even, I would say,
Mm-hmm.
because this is how I raised him, very, very, I'd always read to him. I would never dump this in front of him. No,
Mm-hmm.
I would never, I would give it to him when he had earned it. But I would always read to him, even from babyhood, and just read,
Yeah.
make him good with words and storytelling and picture images, and so that he can express himself articulately. And at 7 years old, it's very beautiful to see how like expressive and articulate that he is.
Mm-hmm.
I always believe that the child will remember you based on efforts. If they, yeah, they will gauge you, especially as they get older, as they become awakened and aware, educated and empowered. As they get older, they will remember you, how you make them feel, and with your efforts. If that makes sense.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
and I also think that, um, like, yeah. So where was I? So as smart as he is, and he is incredibly smart and incredibly articulate, it's just like you say, the brain is not forged. It's not completely um, molded there with the passage of time. So then they're going to understand without actually understanding. And that's where the fine line is, where we have to be careful. And I love this analogy. Picture like, like in they're like judges' scales, and there's a scale on this side, and there's a scale on this side. Now, I love this analogy. Stick with me, because on one side, say the judges' scales are way up here, and then another side is way down here on the judges' scales, you're way off balance, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you want the scales to be, as in this instance, to be as even as possible, to make the scales like, because then going the other way, if we're just like, be careful, play it safe, you can't do that. We're teaching the child to not have confidence, and they're going to doubt themselves, right?
Yeah.
um and if we also like not showcase real life to them, when real life does hit them in the mouth, sorry, but I'm sorry to be graphic, but this is reality, this is true. And when real life hits them in the mouth, they're going to crumble, man. They're not going to know what to do. So I'm a firm believer in that. It's like not being too not being too real, where it scares them or they're not going to understand, and you're going to, make them anxious, but at the same time, being real to prevent them from harm as they get older themselves, of what's to come, so that you're not scaring them. If you do it in a child friendly way, you're protecting them, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because you're making them aware. I also wish to say and double down on your points about playfulness, and the importance is so important with playfulness, right? Because they learn so much through movements and like the coordination, their body coordination, physical abilities. They will learn through movement, through energy, from the company that they're sharing the space with, being their friends.
Mm-hmm.
They will learn, like, depending on the board game, how um to say if it's Connect Four, Connect Four, the movement would be just picking up the counter and just with the arm,
Mm-hmm.
and then going down. But you're learning through games, movement, your body You're learning your body how to maneuver it around, um, by way of playing board games, if this makes sense as well. So
Mhm. Yeah, absolutely. And what I also like is you were talking now about making the child resilient for whatever they will encounter in life
mhm,
and not overprotecting them. So this is what also, so when I separated, I was really looking for a good kind of approach to parenting to become a better mom, because I felt I was very anxious and insecure about being a single mom. So then I discovered this conscious parenting approach. And what that tells you actually is that if you have a tendency to always fix everything, so that's me, right? I want to always protect them and, oh, they have a problem, you want to run to the rescue. So I had to really manage that myself. I had to first kind of get a bit more calm and relaxed myself, understand where it's coming from, and then so conscious parenting basically says be present, like really attune to your child, like give them the full they have to be feeling that you see them, you hear them, you can understand them, and they're free to express themselves as they are, as their authentic self. But then you don't have to always fix. They will find a lot of solutions by themselves if you just stay with them, even if it's uncomfortable, even if they're crying, because often we tend to want to just give them, I mean, not always a chocolate, but like give them a chocolate so they stop crying, no? Especially for people who cannot deal with big emotions.
right.
So that you have to learn how to be with that situation and not fix it immediately, because otherwise, you're right. How will they learn how to be resourceful when things get tough, So that's the
Exactly.
kind of, mhm,
And it is very tough, because I wish to share something with you. Um, I've been, so I mentioned about my wife passing, and I've always been honest with every podcast person I that comes on here, and transparent and honest. You know, I wish I could say, matter of fact, so I was talking to this guy yesterday, and he was a father of five, but he adopted two children,
mhm,
and he said to me, like, sometimes adopting children is a good thing because you can, start afresh, if you will, right? And I wish I could say to you that me and my mother-in-law got on. I'm sorry to say we don't. And unfortunately, there's a lot of tension and conflict between us, and I've gone through hell in order to get my son back. I went through lies, family courts. I represented myself in court, was proven innocent. Um, and some people will go to these depths. Now, I don't like what's happened on her
mhm,
actions. I can understand it though, because who am I to her, with the exception of my son now? Her daughter's passed away. Nobody. What's the emotional
mhm,
ties, spiritual ties? So I'm mature enough to realize this truth. I don't gotta like it, but I understand the reasons as to why she's done it.
mhm,
And for me, it's like I want to take the high road for my son, and for me, forgiveness is the answer, so that he doesn't become affected. But I also wish to say, resulting from her lies, and thank you for listening to this, first of all. Second of all, here's my point. I had to prove myself at Contact. I don't know if you know
mhm.
Contact. It's like you're being observed by contact service facilitators.
Wow. Yeah.
Now, in their worlds, you've got to protect the child at all costs. In their world, you can't leave them alone for a second. Because if you do that, then what they want to do is paintbrush you in the bad light as much as possible, because it might, like with the family courts, it's a lot of it is corruption and money. So they will justify anything to take people's children away, to justify their actions. So
Mhm,
at Contact, I myself, and without losing you, I know I'm going on, but before I said what I said, when we were talking about the child and teaching them to do things for themselves,
mhm,
you know, they were like marking me down as that was a bad thing. I'm like, are you not in the real world? Are you wake up? Like when that child becomes older, he's going to know what to do. Whereas if everything's done for him, like he's been like, for example, my son was so excited to see his dad. This is quite some time ago. Now I've got my son part time. We
Yeah.
co we co-parent now, but just for transparency there. But when I was seeing him at contact, he'll just be being a boy and running around and just sliding on the floor and okay, son, no, you shouldn't do that. But then at the same time, you're excited to see your father. I'm not gonna make my son in a confined space be like supposed to be a good boy in a confined space when he's excited to see his father and he's running around and he's expressing himself through his
Yeah.
emotions, right?
Yeah, of course, because he needs to. Yeah, I mean, he cannot always, especially in those moments. I think I've had my kids many times throw a tantrum somewhere, in a shopping mall,
Yeah.
and
Oh yeah.
initially
Big one.
you have those antennas on your back, and you're like, okay, people are looking at me now. They're gonna, want me to manage the child, but if you stay with them and you're actually okay with it and you don't really care what those strangers are thinking, you give him 5 minutes. Like my son likes to do that. You give him 5 minutes and he's fine. But if you kind of try to force it to,
Mm,
that they cannot even listen in that moment, right? They're so excited, their brain has gone. I mean, they cannot hear words. So
yeah.
when you start like screaming at them, or you see that often, that parents
Right.
try to do that, it's just counterproductive. It's going to get worse, or the child
Hmm.
will be quiet because they're scared. And so
Yes.
it's not compliance, right? It's they're scared because they need to keep that connection to the parent. So
Oh,
it's
I agree.
for-
Yeah, I
right.
agree 1,000,000%. Right. I agree 1,000,000%. And I remember you mentioning earlier many parents don't understand energy. Well, look at what you just said. Well, they absolutely should, because children do learn through energy. Like, and if you
Mhm.
think about it, behind the yapping and the blah, 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 it is the energy behind the words. It's the velocity of how a person's speaking, what tone, what's the energy behind what's being said. So especially,
Yeah.
and if we as think of this, if we as adults feel this, somebody could talk to you in a certain way. It's not your brain consciously and subconsciously is
Hmm.
registering what's being put forth, not just the words, the energy behind it, the velocity. Why do you feel honestly we react in different ways based on what's be from the energy side and different accounts? Now, a lot of it's attributed to how we feel, and I always believe in energy. Like if we're in a lower energetic state, chances are
Yeah.
we're going to become more annoyed. At the same time, a person how vicious or the velocity of what's being said, does that make sense? We will
Yeah.
take it different ways. I do firmly believe that. So if we feel that as adults, imagine what a child feels when, like you say, when we shout at them in public, and like you said, they're going to either go quiet and freeze up like that
Yeah.
because they're scared, or they're going to you know keep getting worse, as you point
Yeah.
out,
Exactly.
right? And but here's the thing, that is through energy.
Hmm.
That isn't differential. That's how the child will compute things, right? And I'll tell you a little hack that's worked for me. I don't want to sound sexist, but I do think when we're men, we get kind of looked at very, how do I say, like in a kind of people judge us, especially as men, when we're out of our children. And I'm sorry to say this sounds sexist, but I do think it's true. And what's worked for me is
Hmm.
just to pretend I don't care. And I understand now why people do wear masks. It's very hard for me to wear a mask. I'm real. I'm the reverse to masks. But
Hmm.
I can understand. And if I force myself to do it, I can. But I can understand why people do wear masks, right? based on being out of my own child. And what's worked for me is that every time he's having a tantrum or shouts or this or that, I just no emotion. So don't care. Yeah. And then what I do is, and I do that because I do that to protect myself. Because if I act out emotionally in public, because I'm a man, I don't want to sound sexist, but because I'm a man, I feel that like a lot of people will think, oh, you're being aggressive and this and this and this, and people will judge you in public, right? And and women too. It's not just men, but I do think because we're men and we have this threat because we're men, there's testosterone, the chances are increased, if that makes sense.
I mean, I hear what you're saying, and I can imagine that. I mean, I think it's mirrored a little bit in that moms tend to be uncomfortable sometimes with the male energy from the son, right? When they just play differently. I can see it because I have a son and a daughter. My
Yeah.
son needs more physical, he
Yes.
needs to run around and he screams more, and he's just different. You can't put him on a table to draw images all day, which my daughter loves. He just needs different kind of play.
Mm.
But I guess it also comes from because the reaction of the child to a man is also different, because you having a deeper voice, you're just more scary.
Great point.
Right.
Great points. Yes. Great.
So this is why also you see often children be more kind of whiny, angry, whatever, with their moms, because it
Mm.
feels it's mom, what she gonna do.
The lighter voice can get away with more of the lighter voice kind of thing.
Exactly. I read somewhere that children behave 800 times worse with moms than with dads. And I was like, oh my God, is that true? I don't know if it's to that extent. I guess it depends on the dad, right? And there's also dads that let the kids be authentic. I understand you do that. So that's probably, you feel more safe. So he's more expressive to you. But yeah, it's interesting.
Oh, for sure. And I think also like it's how it's obviously our own upbringing behind how we raise our child slash children, right?
Hmm.
And what I decided to do was transmute all of my negative into positive because I was given away myself. So I had no like teaching. I was always in like deemed as a lost cause because I was going through the foster care homes and the children's homes, and and I had really I lived in many places, but I'm nowhere stable because I had behavioral issues. As I was given away, I was always just a mess. And my mother and father couldn't, because mental health, it wasn't understood back in the day, as you and I both know. Now, all of a sudden, everyone's got a mental health problem. Now, I'm not trying to sound disrespectful and say people, because of the state of the world's affairs, haven't been made mentally ill, because they most certainly have in many
Hmm.
instances. But I will admit to you, I do have a bit of a grudge because I've got a condition myself called ADHD and,
Yeah.
and autism, and it wasn't known back in the day. So, like, I was born with it, right? People have been made to be this way, but when you're born with it, you do have a bit of a grudge. But because I've had to fight and fight and fight, and not and like physically and mentally and emotionally and psychologically and spiritually to get to the point where I am now
Hmm.
because of what life dealt, the cards I was dealt in life. And because mental health wasn't understood, my mum couldn't cope. Um, and she had mental health conditions herself, which in turn were passed on to me because it's genetics. She had ADHD and autism, as do I. But because I grew up in care, I had no teaching as to how to be. I wasn't instilled with like morals and values and this, and this. But so when my son was born, fast forward, I'm thinking to myself, like, how am I going to make this work? How am I going to like, because I've conquered all my life, right? I
Hmm.
have. I've got my own 3-bedroom house, cash bought outright. I've got my own multiple businesses with YouTube and podcast and doing things like this. I've more than done my fair share of raising my son with the emotions and the playfulness. I've always proven people wrong and have always found a way to win in spite of the worst odds. And that's because of resourcefulness, and that's because
Mhm.
of refusing to be denied. When I grew up in not only the care system from 4 to 18, but the mental health system thereafter from 18 to 29, and living with significantly worse issues because it's the system, it throws you all together.
Uh-huh.
Does that make sense? And that in turn effed me up for a long time. So I've got a very big past, and I've always been honest with podcasters I do this with. That's why I say I'm not the perfect dad, as in like I'm not, I haven't had a normal life. However, what I'm very good at, going back to how am I going to make this work with my child, is how do I transmute all the pain from being given away myself
Mhm.
by my own parents and making it work with my son. And the emotion that really stood out to me was pain and how I felt being given away. And I thought I didn't want my child to feel that and feel what I felt. So
Yeah.
I did the reverse to what everybody else was thinking, that they didn't think I could do this. But because of the emotion of being with pain, and my profile was littered with me and my son and the emotions behind it and how I raised him. You know, golden moments over the years, videos, etc. Like, so that's proof right there. But it was transmuting my pain and just ensuring that my son doesn't deserve this, man. He's an innocent life. I want to give so much love to him and just and do that. And I did. Um, and that's what I'm saying. Like when they remember your efforts. And when they remember your efforts, they remember you because they remember how you make them feel. And when they
Mhm.
remember how you make them feel, they will always call for you, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, because so in conscious parenting, it's so much about the connection that you cannot so the paradigm is connection over correction before you correct
I
anything,
love
because you have to understand anyway what's underneath the behavior is just a surface, right? So
that.
if the kid is angry, he's probably sad underneath or scared or something. So you have to first connect and see what is really the issue, because it's
Mhm.
an internal sign that something has gone wrong. So now my child needs my help. And then that connection, you have to really keep that strong, especially when they get into teenagehood, right? Because otherwise there's so
Absolutely.
many
Oh,
influences.
yes.
It's
Teenagers. Oh,
crazy. They're gonna get bullied. They're gonna
yeah,
whatever get into bad influencers in the internet and social
yeah,
media. It's just very important that they can be honest with you, right? And that's only possible if you have that connection.
yes. Teenagehood is a cat. No, absolutely correct you are. And teenagehood is a cat of a different breeds, really,
Yeah.
because I I've got experience a lot with, and I love what you say, connection over correction. It's beautiful
Mhm.
because that just embodies what we've been talking about, energy, and how children do learn and through energy behind the words, right? And more parents need to be aware of this truth because it is how children learn. Because so, but it's like, yeah. Well, what I'm trying to say is that, like, with, I think with teenagers and you know, I wish to share this with you as well. I know a lot about child psychology. I may have been given away, but but I would talk to the other rejects with the other children in children's homes, right?
Mhm.
Many of them I was. And when I was a teenager myself, yeah, drugs. I used to have a spliff and some weed, puff, and alcohol because it was part of the process in children's homes. And you're given away, so you turn to
Mhm.
drugs, and but every time we'll be having a smoke, we'll do the classic: put the sock over the fire alarm to prevent the staff coming, for the alarm's going off, and we'll put the two socks over the alarm and smoke. But then we would talk because we would have a cider and a spliff in them up, but we would talk and we would be like a family, if you will, because
Mhm.
we had no family. We were given away. So
Yeah.
we became each other's family by way of like talking, right? And we would ask ourselves, like, why are we so angry here? Why are we misbehaving? We'll talk about it. We're like our behaviors, like criminally what we did. We did do criminal things, lots of fighting and this and that, and because we had no guidance and support.
Hmm.
And we would ask ourselves the questions behind it and how we were feeling emotionally. Would have deep thought-provoking conversations many times. And I
Hmm.
learned much about myself and in turn, much about them. And I'm sure vice versa for them to me. Although obviously at the time we're not thinking that way. We just want to, I guess, as a teenager, make sense of what's going on, right? We're
Hmm.
not older and maturer now where we have hindsight 2020 and we can look back and retrospect and make sense and connect the dots. At that time in our teenage brain, we just wanted someone to console with, right? But,
Yeah.
but nevertheless, looking back, I'm very good at child psychology. So that's how I'm able to very well know the emotions and the important, does that make sense? And like importance of playfulness and, you know, the importance of like being, I'd even say spiritually engaged as
Hmm.
well. And these are the teachings I've passed on to my son. Like, so for example, by talking to the other children, I know what pain feels like. I know what lack of understanding feels like. Now,
Hmm.
these might seem negative on the surface, but not so fast. You scratch at the surface, you can really teach your child what you wish you were taught, if that makes sense. And you can also,
Exactly.
because you felt the pain, you know.
Hmm.
So you know what I mean. So
Absolutely. Yeah, yeah. So exactly because you understand how it was to be misunderstood and not seen and all this and
yes,
abandoned. So that's what you can really make him feel seen and understood and that you're there for him, right? And that you're
yeah.
fighting for him. Yeah.
Oh, absolutely, and I didn't want to make it all because I just only put that for links to
Hmm.
conscious parenting just for the records because I don't want to like I li- I only tell my story to benefit the podcast, not for people to feel sorry for me.
Yeah.
But if I feel that my story does serve and benefit other people as well.
Hmm.
In your case, conscious parenting. So
Yeah.
just for the record, it wasn't me, like where it was me, it was more to do with like the conscience and the emotions, if that makes
No,
sense.
because I mean, you're out of the victim. I think this is
Right,
also
right,
something
yes.
that conscious parenting teaches parents, and I think as single parents is also very important because I read somewhere, but I'm sure this also applies to dads when
Mm,
it's a single dad. You know,
yeah,
when they say the emotional well-being of the child is to 70 or 80% related directly or correlated directly to the emotional well-being of the mother. So when you become a single mom or you start as a single mom or whatever happens to you, if you see yourself as a victim, and if you're not okay with the situation, if you see it as a disaster, oh, this happened and now my family was not the way I had to, the imagination we always have never turns out to be the reality, right?
mhm,
But when you see yourself as a victim, also the children will see themselves as victims, but they don't have to grow up in a disaster or as victims just because people separated. Or I mean, in your case it's much more severe. Mom passed away. I mean, this is really tragedy, right? um Not every separation is a tragedy. Sometimes it's a good thing, but in your case, obviously, it's a terrible tragedy. But um so not to belittle that, but the moment you don't see yourself as a victim and that also teaches resilience, because
it
they
does.
can see this is what mom went through, or this is what dad went through, but still they're okay, so I can also be okay.
Yeah, and teaches resourcefulness. I'd add to that,
Yeah.
which is the ultimate human resource, right? And I wish to share with you, like, you know, finding a way because they were like that's the thing, and even when I had to undergo all these tests, even the psychologist said she commended me for finding a way for my son. But not only did I find a way, I found multiple ways, and that's
Mhm.
just due to grit and resourcefulness and realizing that I had a responsibility over an innocent life, and that and because of, I guess, and I was always loving to him, but especially like when he lost his mum, I was there so much. And I'm not going to lie to you, learning to be mummy and the caring side and daddy and integrating that with parenting across generations, man, it took a lot out of me. But I'm not
Yeah.
going to lie, but I knew that that was my job. That was my due diligence. That was my job. And I wanted to break out from what my parents never gave me. I wanted to be the black sheep and break out and break that cycle. And
Yeah.
I did that through conscious parenting. And it was just from, I think we cannot feel without experience, right? Or
Mm-hmm.
experiences. So going back to the pain analogy I put forth from my background, I knew what that felt like. So I knew that because I felt that such way down with weights on the shoulders and just pain at that heavy feeling, it's a horrible feeling, right? The
Mm-hmm.
state of anxiety, fear, the weight down, we've all felt it at times. But I knew that my son didn't deserve that, and so by feeling that pain, I was able to give him nothing but love with conscious parenting, was relating to my pain, if that makes sense, and finding a
Yeah.
way. I also wish to share with you actually that in addition to children's homes um, and foster places, but especially children's homes, because you meet many more kids. I also wish to share with you that I know many single, because they say birds of a feather flock together, right? So if you're a single mum or a single father, you're naturally going to gravitate towards other single mothers and single.
Mm-hmm.
And I can share with you that, because what I love about children is that they know the truth. They might, and they know without knowing because they feel the truth. If you're a piece of fill in the blank, they're going to know that you're a piece of fill in the blank. Whereas if you're like genuine and pure and loving and joyous and playful, they will sense that on you. They
Yeah.
know through energy, man. They do. And I've met other, not only have I learnt so much psychology of the other children in children's homes, I've learnt much as well relating to friends of mine, single mothers and fathers who I've helped over summer holiday break, and they've had meltdowns over summer holidays. And this will lead us beautifully into our next segue, actually, with the technology conversation.
Mm-hmm.
I've got strong opinions about that, but why they're having meltdowns with their children, and by helping out with parents I've helped over summer holiday, I've learned much about the psychology of children with related to playfulness there by helping them, So
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely.
yeah. Um Ria, is there anything more on this topic? I'm just conscious of time.
No, I think that kind of covers it. And if people are interested in conscious parenting, obviously they can learn about it. It's if you type it into Google, you'll find Dr.
Yeah,
Shafali, who's my mentor, and all her books and everything.
for
So
sure.
yeah,
Yes, conscious parenting is so important. And just for people watching this, please do feel, um, that you um, can become much better consciously if you're willing to make that decision, right?
yeah,
And it's for the greater good of your own child or children. Um, please do, as Ria says, please Google this if you want to do such. With all this said, let's now move on, and I'll give the floor to you. What would you like to discuss next? The dangers of excessive technology, or no?
so and in terms of technology, I really think I think I agree with you with what I've gathered from other podcasts that you've done. I've watched a few of those. That if we use technology as a babysitter or as the, you know, because
Mhm,
before we had to, I mean, before there was technology, we had to find for children something to do, or they had to be bored or something. But
mhm.
now this is kind of the go-to nanny if we don't have time, and it's just very dangerous because there's no, when they want to develop emotional connection to others, there's obviously no feedback, right? They watch something and it's maybe disturbing them, but there's no emotional attunement from that side, especially when they're small. So I think you're right, it's important to manage that.
Yeah, for sure. Like, if we go back to our day, right, we had to get creative because there were no technological devices. So as
Mhm.
we were like young kids and morphed into early teenagers, we had to get like so much, I want to say like more resourceful behind like timekeeping skills. I think we were a lot more organized, and I say this with respect to it in our time before the technological devices, because we had to be. Let's just say that and I said the same thing yesterday in yesterday's podcast, when we're talking about this. Um, like say, back in the day we had landlines or payphones, right?
Mhm.
So what that meant was we had to be on time or more or less on time. It's not
Yeah,
like we whip out our phone, where are you on Messenger or messages or WhatsApp, and instant find out where that person is. We can't do that now. Or back then, that we can now. We couldn't do that back then. So my point is, I think we're a lot more organized as children, and like we're a lot more resourceful behind how we're going to stimulate our brain with
mhm.
our younger self. Whereas in the times in which we're in now, regarding technology, with this like instant gratification, constant like dopamine rush that people seek, the
Yeah,
attention span is like got 3 seconds, they say, right? It's a microwavable society now. So what do we do about that? And how do we control that? Because technology, as great as it is, and there's many positives to it as well. There are. We couldn't be doing this right now without technology,
yeah,
obviously, right? So there's
yeah,
many positives. We'd have to go back to a horrible boss for a living rather than work online. That's another example. So technology is beautiful, but as long as we're in control of it, not excessive technology where it's dumping it in front of the child's face daily for peace and quiet, right? There's times where we're tired. This is true.
yeah,
There's times where we have to work. This is additionally also true. But if we're not careful, we're not teaching the child emotions over long meandering periods of time. And then what happens is they're going to be a zombified, dead-eyed teenager who can't like that, who can't express their suppressed emotions because
hmm,
they haven't been taught how, right? So
yeah. I think there an important point is that it's easy at some point to blame the child. Oh, you're watching too much TV, or you want to play video games. I mean, thank God mine don't they're not in that age yet. But
wait a while.
but it's then the question is, well, who put the devices in the house? Was it the
Mm,
child? No, it was you, right? Who introduced that to them? It was you. What is your own? Like, do you walk around with your phone in your hand the whole time? Of course, then they will want it, right? So
yeah.
I also consciously, when I go home after work, I really
Mhm.
put my phone away because I
Yes.
don't want to show them that, oh, I'm listening to you with a half ear, but I'm also on my phone, because then it becomes so interesting that they want that as well, right? So I think a lot again is, what do you show, what example do you show as a parent? Are you constantly hooked to your devices? They know, for example, if I have to work on the computer, it's work. And they
Mm,
can have a look, it's an Excel sheet or whatever. I'm not watching movie.
yeah.
So they understand this is work, mommy needs this for work, but it's not that she's, doing something fun or whatever. Um, so I think, and then if we have fallen into the trap where the child is very, addicted to screens, how do we also break it? Do we break it by screaming at them and blaming them for something that we introduced? Or do we then have to tune again to this child and say, okay, so tell me, what are you watching? Like, go there first. Like, okay, so connect first. And then you can watch with them for a few minutes and then say, okay, so we're gonna switch this off. It doesn't mean you don't have boundaries, right? But then you can kind of bring them along, or you can say, you know what, we've been using TV here or screens, but now we should change the rules, and then make rules and also bring them along. What do you think we can do? And you have to be entertaining sometimes yourself, even if you're tired. Because
Yeah.
if you're so boring that you can't connect with them, because the question is also, what do they seek? Why do they like that? It's because maybe that's more interesting because mommy's not looking at me, right? Because she's always doing something else.
Right.
So I think it's very complex. It's not just and then we have to also understand how addictive it is. It's made to be addictive for them, right?
Yeah.
So
Absolutely.
we're really up against a huge force there.
Oh, we are for sure. You know, a few things that stick out to me based on what you said. Let me triple down on this. So, I love what you say relating to um, consciously not having your phone on you because it is teaching the child that, well, like you say, if you're on your phone playing games or scrolling through entertainments,
Hmm.
and the child, well, why can't I have my entertainment then? You know, that's not
Right.
fair, right?
Hmm.
Because so and just as a side note, a very brief side note, I stopped doing this now because it's very toxic. I used to go on like live stream apps like Scouts and Meet Me. They're like dating, and this is some time ago, long time ago, maybe like a year. I used to be really into it, but I stopped doing it because I found it was very toxic behavior, number one. But number two, I was disgusted with parents who actually deserve to have their children taken away, who are like not only live streaming and talking about adult related things in front of their kids, but swearing. I've heard children mirroring them and swearing at them back on live streams, as an example, right? So now that's just a little side note, but my point is these people actually, in my opinion, deserve to have the children. Not a good men who make bad choices. But anyway, but let's stick to what you say. So yeah, with like the work side, if you do show your child that, because I think the best way, and tell me if I'm wrong, I think, and it's a strategy that's worked for me and my son as well. I, I'll mirror you. I showed them I'm working, whether it's Facebook, because I say, son, Facebook's my business and I've got a YouTube
Yeah.
channel. So, but then there's times where I do Excel sheets as well, and I show him that and I'm typing out. But also, what I do as well to make him really understand me is that I say, see this, what you're wearing, son, your favorite Pokemon top? Guess what? That costs money. See your entertainment coming up with water slides? Son, that costs money. I'm going to show you the receipt, son. And my point is, son, I need to work so I can
Hmm.
make money to take you out.
Yeah.
That sticks now, doesn't it? Right?
Hmm. Yeah,
So,
yeah, exactly.
you
So
know,
they also know that very well. I think it's important to tell them, but sometimes they also and you're right, you can also be on a video call. I mean, I also do video calls for work a lot, and
yeah.
then they know, right? And these people, they're not talking about work stuff. It's not
Mm,
my mom's friend who's just hanging out with her, and
right.
yeah, no, it's so important, but they know exactly that that's work. She needs to work because we need to pay the bills. And
Mm,
then
mm,
and sometimes if it's like a Sunday morning, and sometimes I tell them also, I say, I'm checking. They're like, oh, what are you looking? I said, here, look, I'm just looking for the weather forecast because we want to go out. So, or I tell them, oh, I'm just figuring out how we go from A to B to the kid's birthday we're going to, so I need to find the public transport connection.
yes.
So that you're also kind of transparent, but really check on yourself, like how much you do that. Exactly. I mean, adults can fall into addictive behaviors, so children much more so, because their
Oh,
brain is like that, right?
oh, absolutely. And it's also temptation, especially because you mentioned earlier one, and I'm going to double down on this when they go to school as they move
Hmm.
to teenagehood. And yes, we do get concerned and scared because we do think of like peer pressure and bad influences and how that affects our child or children. So they learn so much through other people as well. And if we want them to be around good influences, unfortunately, more often than not, the child will revolt the more we say you shouldn't
Hmm.
be. So it's up to us, sticking with what you're putting forth with conscience parenting. I find that, and because going back to, and you'll see that when I say things, I'm intentional. I don't say to you in a woe is me way, but now you're going to see the dots connecting, linking it with conscious parenting. Going back to what I say about the children's homes and speaking to the other teenagers, me knowing much about child psychology, I can say to you with confidence, instead of saying you shouldn't do this and you shouldn't do that, what we need to do is say things in a way that will make it stick and click with our child. And
Mhm.
sometimes what that involves is speaking their language. Teenagers, they learn so much through sarcasm. They're very sarcastic. Believe it or not, if we're sarcastic as well as their parents and we speak their language, that can have positive effects when we're trying to deliver our message because we're
Mhm.
speaking their own language, as an example.
Yeah, 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 exactly.
But if we say, I'm sorry, but if we say like you shouldn't, you can't do that. I'm not happy. I'm not happy you hang around like that person. That's bad. Then I'm sorry to say this. This is the child will say you're trying to control me,
Hmm.
control the behavior. They're going to revolt. Sorry.
Yeah, no, no, I fully agree. Fully agree with you.
Thank you. Is there anything more on technology that you wish to discuss?
No, I think that that's it for me. I mean, I think a lot of battles are yet to come because my kids are still small.
Yeah, same. My boy's 7, so how many do you have, may I ask?
Two. So
2.
my
Beautiful.
I have a one is turning 5 next week. He's a boy, and then this girl, she's like 6.5.
Beautiful age. Beautiful age is. Wow. It's
Yeah.
5. That's beautiful.
Yeah.
I'm very happy for you. Really.
Yeah.
Yeah, man.
Thank you.
Really. You're welcome. Welcome. So with all this said, this leads us into our last topic, and that's emotional immersion. It's one thing to be, and I'll start if I may. It's one thing to say take your son or daughter to a football game or a soccer game or an ice hockey game or a play or something, right?
Hmm.
Uh, um, I'm not taking your picture. And it's one thing to be distracted
Yeah.
with your device. I'm just using that as to embody what I'm saying. Um, and to be distracted by the device. It's another thing without taking the device and being completely immersed
Hmm.
behind what they're doing. Your thoughts?
Yeah. No, no, I think I fully agree with that. So it's this because the otherwise they do not fully feel seen and heard, right? Because you're
Right.
distracted, you do
Yes.
not really listen to them. They have to repeat themselves. It's just frustrating. But we
It
have
is.
that with adults also. I mean, this kind of really deep listening skill is something that a lot of people just don't have, but it's so important with children to practice that.
Oh, absolutely. Like we must teach them these skills as they become older, and I actually said the same thing, coincidentally enough, to and I've mentioned this before, quite maybe a couple of times. I said the same things on the podcast I did this yesterday, but it's true. Your job as a parent, your job, my job, every other parent's job, is to make your child socially desirable by the age that they're 4 years old. Because if we do not, they're going to experience nothing but false smiles from other parents and rejection from other children. So
Hmm.
I like, how do we do that? How do we make them so socially desirable? My belief is emotional immersion, especially from young kids in the playground, because then it gives them the confidence towards making friends, towards managing their everyday, say, schooling, right? We give them that confidence and make them socially desirable with efforts. And if they feel our energy based on our efforts, they will become bright shining lights because they will be able to express themselves
Hmm.
incredibly well and articulately, and in turn attract other people who aren't so confident, that want that, to be linked with that, if that makes sense, to be
Yeah.
that almost electrifying personality if they're so socially engaged and warmth and articulate. These are skills I taught my son. And another thing I taught him um, was the importance of exercise. And he loves exercise. And at 7 years old, he's so strong. And I developed him like his body, always encouraged him, and I've got plenty of videos to showcase on my profile, by the way. And I'm going to upload loads more in due course. But like, I'd always, you know, encourage him with like exercising and the monkey bars. He would have to do it with me at the time because he was
Mm-hmm.
small. But as he's become older and physically able, he's much more confident. Now he's physically got the length of his arms and the strength
Yeah.
physically to do it. And he loves his exercise. He loves, like, in the park, you've got these outdoor machines. He loves going on the chest press. At 7 years old, he's sitting there and he's doing it by himself, maybe like, 7 or 8 by himself, and at 7, because I've done it with him and
Yeah.
encouraged him because he liked it. If he didn't like it, well, I'm not going to force you, but he liked it and he
Yeah.
wanted to do it, right? So it's a beautiful thing. I think like emotional immersion through like exercise, words of encouragement. So I would always go, big boy, big boy, big boy, and like just encourage him like that. So like, yeah, you're a big boy, you're doing well, you're gonna big boy, do it by yourself. Like the emotions behind that, how I sounded there, big boy, and just how that computed with him. Does that
Mm-hmm.
make sense? Because they learn through tone, through energy, through your effort. And I'm very passionate. I'm going bit on a bit, but I'm very passionate about it.
Yeah, no, I like that. And I can tell you that as a single working mom that I
Mm.
am, I wouldn't get much exercise if I wouldn't be running around with them in the park. So he's trained me pretty well, especially my son in football now. I think I'm
Yeah.
probably better at it now than I used to be at school, And
Yes.
and I can see, and he's like, "Oh, mommy, you're not that bad anymore." And I'm like, You've trained me pretty well, but you know what to do. It's an opportunity for you as well. But what I also wanted to mention with this
Mm,
emergence
please.
is what I try to also teach them, which also comes from conscious parenting, is not so much to do something for the kind of praise of me or praise of others, but I try to make them aware of how they feel about it. So, for example, if they tell me, "Oh, today in school I had like 3 tasks and I could do them all," so I don't say, "Well, that's." Of course, I say, "Well, that's very nice that you did that," but then I also say, "How did that feel for you?" That felt good.
Mm.
Okay, that feels good. Okay. Or sometimes about, food. When I tell them, okay, how does it feel when you eat the carrots rather than something sweet? Because sugar will trigger a different emotion, but they sometimes not that connected to the body. So you can teach them from a young age how to feel, and
Mhm.
then sometimes they will choose the carrot over the sweet when their friends, outside offer them a sweet because they know the feeling is different afterwards.
I love that, what you're saying. Like, how does it make you feel? I
Mm-hmm.
love that because the children will always appreciate that when we ask them how things make them feel. And I think, like, moreover, yeah, the importance of, because yes, especially, I mean, we as adults get like a sugar rush if we have something sugary or whatever. So you
Yeah.
imagine how a child feels, right? Going with all that energy they have, and
Yeah.
then imagine how magnified it is when they have that sugary thing.
And sometimes they act out, and you're like,
Right.
of
Yeah.
course, this is what they ate. That's what I gave them to eat. And it's no wonder.
No, it's beautiful what you say. You actually reminded me of a beautiful friend of mine and her daughter. And look, I'd never change my son for everything or anything. I love him with the bottom of my heart. And I'm glad I had a boy now looking back on it. But I'll share with you, I originally wanted a daughter. And I had I was actually at a friend's and I kind of fallen she's not like she's a single mum, and there's like attraction there, but it's more like spiritual family
Hmm.
orientated. Does that make sense? Like,
Yeah,
I know it's kind of weird, but it's like sometimes we can be attracted to people and other people's children, but it's more like spiritual and family centric rather than
yeah.
romantic. Does that make
I
sense?
totally get that. Yeah, yeah.
Right. And so I was at her house the other day, and her daughter's beautiful. I love her, and her dad gave up on her, bless her. And maybe that's why I feel so strongly because I was given away. And maybe I think so. But anyway, we were there, and it was a beautiful game we were playing. I wish to share this with you. When I met them, we hit Sainsbury's first and got some fruit and some brown sugar, healthier than white sugar, right?
Yeah.
And we just and we were teaching her child, like, okay, we're gonna have strawberries without sugar, and then we're gonna have strawberries. Yeah, you get your dopamine rush, and you get your love, and it does taste lovely. Strawberry and brown sugar, mwah, chef's kiss. Really, it tastes beautiful. But we're also teaching her, well, there's your reward, brown sugar with strawberry, but then have it without as well, so that you're getting it without sugar and you're getting more pureness and natural and wholeness inside of you without
Yeah.
sugar. And what that's doing is teaching the child, like, and differentiating, if I said that correct, differentiating between comparing
Yeah.
between um uh fruit with like sugar where it feels good, and then fruit of like a whole natural, like
Hmm.
whole healthy, way. So
Yeah.
it was really good.
Yeah. Fantastic.
Um
So yeah, so I think a lot of it is really because you want them to be free to authentically express, but also to really understand what they need, right? So this body feeling is so important because I think even as adults, a lot of us are in our head. We
yeah,
don't sense. Even with feelings, you can say, I always ask them, where do you feel sad? Is it here? Is it constricting your throat? Is it in your heart? Is it in your belly? So they get this body consciousness, right?
beautiful. That is absolutely beautiful. Ria, with that point in mind, I would love for you to tell people where they can find you, because that was a beautiful point to
Yeah.
link that with where people can find you of
So
conscious.
people can find me under consciousparentingstory.com. That's my webpage, where I offer different services, some for free, some are not for free, but there's also resources for free. And then I'm on Instagram as a Conscious Heart Mom.
Fantastic stuff.
Yeah,
Fantastic stuff.
yeah.
Ria, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on.
Thank you so much for having me.
Really, no, you're very welcome. I feel like we've had a great dialogue back and forth,
Yeah,
and we've given each other some very powerful, aha moments and insights. So
yeah. Thank you so much. Have a lovely day.
you too. Thank you
Bye.
very much.
Bye.
Yeah. Cheers. Thank you, Ria.
Cheers.